injury list on Thursday compared to the day before, but the downside, there's some pretty big names that were still out. We're going to be breaking down the injury report heading into Seattle's latest matchup against the Cleveland Browns coming up next year on our Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined on this 90s-themed Blue Friday episode by my co-host, Nick Lee, and a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s out there, whether you're listening from Juneau, Alaska, or Galveston, Texas. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. Also, those of you in the Portland area, thanks for all of the photos of our billboards. We're really excited about that. Another way to reach out to the masses of the 12s. And we greatly appreciate all of you that are sending in the pictures that have gotten a chance to see those. It's a really exciting moment for Locked On Seahawks. Speaking of Locked On Seahawks, it's our typical Blue Friday show with a little bit of a 90s twist. The Seahawks are going to be wearing their 90s throwback uniforms this week. We apologize in advance for all of the 90s references that are going to be on this episode, especially Nick. He has been looking forward to this all week. We're going to have our keys to victory, our weekly picks to click, game predictions, and much more coming your way, courtesy of PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Yesterday, the Seahawks had a much smaller injury report than what we saw on Wednesday. That's the plus side. But anytime you see Tyler Lockett, Ken Walker III, and Bobby Wagner all listed as out, it kind of becomes one of those days where you just want to break stuff if you're a Seahawks fan. And unfortunately, that's what we got to see yesterday. Second straight day, no Bobby Wagner, no Ken Walker III, and no Tyler Lockett held out with injuries. Now, I would suspect all three of these players are going to be ready to go by Sunday, but when you miss the first 2 days of a practice week, it at least creates some uncertainty on the prospects. And especially with Bobby Wagner not having him against this Cleveland Browns team, these are significant injuries worth noting.
Well, first off, Corbin, thanks. It's a joy to be here. And as Montel Jordan once said, the party's here on the west side, and the party is going to be here in Seattle. And the injuries, they are actually, it's funny because the list is a bit smaller, but the names certainly pack a punch. Lockett played through a hamstring injury last week. I'm not super worried about Lockett. I got to feel like Bobby Wagner is going to find a way to get on the field. Ken Walker, maybe a bit banged up, but I want to flip it as well with the running back room, I think is where I want to go. And yes, while Ken Walker III is being held out, and that's a concern, we have the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, the LA native himself, Zach Charbonnet, could be, it was upgraded to full participant, and it could be possibly one to help shoulder the load for carries. And then another one, how about Kenny McIntosh giving that running back room that boost, like a Capri Sun at halftime of your youth soccer game? And Kenny McIntosh, I think, going back to his draft profile, prototypical third down back with good hands, played in a more pro-style offense at Georgia, isn't as natural of a runner as the other two running backs on top of the depth chart for the Seahawks, but really he's physical with great hands, had 505 receiving yards for Georgia last year. So getting him in uniform and getting him on the field could really be an enormous boost. I know, it's a 7th round pick, but really I think we both can agree he should have been a lot higher. So what a boost possibly for this running back room.
Yeah, and he looked so good before he suffered that knee sprain in the mock game scrimmage. He was off to a fabulous start in training camp. So getting him back, Charbonnet is good to go. DK Metcalf has been a full participant, even though Pete Carroll said on Wednesday they were going to limit him. DK Metcalf has been full participant the last 2 days. So it's looking like he is going to be back. And as Andy Dufresne said, hope is a good thing, the best of all things. And so looking at this injury report, I have a lot of hope because, again, Ken Walker III, he had 26 carries on Sunday. I think this is more about the Seahawks just making sure that he's ready to go on game day. We've reached that stage of the season with running backs. Just put them in bubble wrap. Let's make sure they're good to go on game day. And Bobby Wagner, he talked to the media on Wednesday. I don't think he would have spoke with the media if he wasn't going to be playing in this game. The Seahawks normally handle things that way. So, again, I think this is precautionary. Tyler Lockett had a helmet on and did some stuff at the beginning of practice yesterday, at least in warm-up. So I expect all three of those players will go. Now, Phil Haynes with the calf, that is just an injury that just doesn't seem to be getting better. So I'm thinking Anthony Bradford's probably going to be starting again in this game. But if you're looking for another reason for hope here, Nick, Evan Brown has been a full participant all week. So the Seahawks are going to get him back at the center position, and they need that against this Browns defensive line. They are going to need to have as many hands on deck as they can. And not taking anything away from Oluwatimi, because I think he's done a good job in pass pro, but he had his struggles last week creating push in the run game. Evan Brown is going to help them in that regard, and they're going to need to be able to run the ball in this game. So I think when you look at the fact DK Metcalf is going to be good to go, Evan Brown's good to go, you're going to have Kenny McIntosh looking like he's going to make his NFL debut. Zach Charbonnet has practiced all week. Noah Fant, Trey Brown, and those guys are all good to go. They're full participants, even though they got a little nicked up this last game. Really, for the most part, this is a positive injury list. And if I had any real concern about those big names that have been held out this week, then obviously those would all be big losses. But again, I expect we're at least going to see them limited, if not full participants on Friday's practice report. I'll be surprised if they're not participating. And I would expect that they are going to be out there on Sunday, which would be a big deal for the Seahawks going up against a really talented Browns team. You want to have as many of your good players available for this team that beat the 49ers just 2 weeks ago.
Right. Yeah. This is a game you need all hands on deck, especially in the trenches. And I know this isn't really showing up in the injury report, but it's also nice to get possibly Frank Clark. And I know it's hard to get really into, what he's going to look like on Sunday, just coming fresh off the street pretty much in a way. After that brutal loss to Uchenna Nwosu, Pete Carroll told Frank Clark, "Come as you are, as you were, as I want you to be, as a friend, as an old enemy." Frank Clark back in the fold. So that was a big boost as well.
Yeah, getting him back on the field is going to be huge for the Seahawks. And I have a feeling that he is going to be able to play maybe 20 snaps or so for you, because you have to remember, yes, he has been on the street, but he was with the Broncos until a few weeks ago when they released him. So he should be in good football shape. And this is a role, as Pete Carroll was talking about, even though this defense is different in some regards, he's going to be playing a very similar role to what the Seahawks had him do earlier when he was with the team his first 4 seasons. This is not going to be one of those positions where there's going to be a major learning curve. He knows what to do. He knows what the Seahawks expect of him. And Clint Hurt, the defensive coordinator, knows Frank Clark really well. He knows how to maximize his strengths. So I think he's going to be ready to hit the ground running. He's coming in good football shape. He's excited to be back. His teammates are excited. I mean, he and Jaron Reed, those two, the Seahawks are just hoping they can get even a semblance of the production they've gotten from Jaron Reed, rejuvenating his career, that they can get out of Frank Clark here. So getting him back, certainly that's going to be a nice addition. Not on the injury report, thank goodness. He's come right in and ready to go. But D. Eskridge is the other name worth noting here. They have a roster exemption on him, so he's technically not on the 53-man roster this week. But Pete Carroll said there was a chance he might be able to play this weekend. I'd be surprised if they do that. I think they'll take advantage of the exemption they have. But that is a wild card to keep an eye on if the Seahawks want to make him active this week. He has been working out of the facility the last few weeks at the end of his suspension. So there's a lot going on with this injury report, some big names on there. But my thing for the 12s, I wouldn't get too concerned here. And we'll see. Maybe one of these players is seriously banged up enough that Sunday's game comes into question. But I think this is more about protecting your assets at this stage of the season. Let's make sure these guys are ready to go for game day. And especially somebody like Bobby Wagner that is going to be doing the preparation stuff he needs to off the field to be ready for Sunday. And I'm expecting coming in at 6 a.m. and getting his work in. So he is going to be ready to go, I have a feeling. And so overall, this is a much more positive injury report than what it looked like Wednesday, when it felt like half the team again was either out or limited in practice. So the Seahawks should be in decent shape coming into Sunday's game. Coming up next, we're going to get to our weekly keys to victory on offense and defense. What do the Seahawks need to do to hand the Browns a loss at Lumen Field? Don't go away. You're listening to the Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. which is brought your way by FanDuel. Get ready for Week 8 in the NFL with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, such as the Seahawks right now being 3.5-point favorites over the Browns. Player props, Devin Witherspoon is quickly climbing up that list as a favorite for Rookie of the Year odds, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and enjoy the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. You're listening to the Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined here on this 90s theme show by my co-host, Nick Lee. And a special thanks to each and every one of the 12s for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. Coming up later today, Locked On NFL Kickoff Live. It's going to be on every single NFL YouTube channel, including Locked On Seahawks. Host Tanitra Batiste, Jarvis Davis, and Kyle Krabs will break down every game on the NFL slate to get you ready for your team's matchup, your fantasy lineups, your betting angles, and more. Plus, get the in-depth local analysis from our stable of NFL hosts across the country who know these teams better than anyone else. Find Locked On NFL Kickoff Live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern on any Locked On NFL YouTube channel. Let's get to our keys to victory, orchestrating a game plan for the Seahawks to beat the Browns. And this is a talented football team. Yes, they've got some injuries. They're going to be playing a backup quarterback, but this is certainly not a team you can overlook. They just beat the 49ers 2 weeks ago with their backup quarterback, P.J. Walker, under center. They've got a lot of talent on both sides of the football. So this is not a game the Seahawks can sleepwalk through. And Cleveland's coming in 4-2. You shouldn't be sleepwalking anyway. They are one of the better up-and-coming teams in a loaded AFC right now. So looking from the offensive perspective, Nick, for the Seahawks, what is the first thing that jumps out to you that needs to happen for Seattle to be able to win this football game and send the Browns back home with an L?
Well, you look at the defensive stats for Cleveland. They are the #1 passing defense, which is certainly something to be concerned about. However, they are also 1-2 when allowing just more than 150 passing yards this year, and 3-0 when they hold their opponents to less than 150. So essentially, they really want to make you one-dimensional. So I think really that you can't be scared to throw the ball. You can't go into a shell. And Gino just got to say, as Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg once said, ain't nothing but a G thing. And G being Gino, just sling it, man. And be smart about it, but don't be afraid to take those shots, take those windows, challenge them. Even though they are the #1 passing defense, you absolutely cannot afford to be one-dimensional in this kind of game.
No, you can't. You have to be able to throw the football. And Cleveland, they've been really good defending the pass. But I think that it's more about what's going on up front than in the back. And this is a good secondary. I'm not taking away from Cleveland secondary. Denzel Ward's a really good player. Martin Emerson has been better than I thought he was going to be in the NFL. And they've also got another first-rounder in Greg Newsome that can play inside and out. He's kind of their Devin Witherspoon. But to me, this game is one of those where it's all about not hitting the iceberg. You can't let the iceberg sink your ship. And the iceberg in this case, he's built like an iceberg. It is Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett is, in my opinion, one of the top 3 defensive players right now in the entire NFL. He has that kind of ability to wreck games. And we know Seattle's tackle situation. They're not going to have Abraham Lucas back yet. I'm suspecting Stone Forsythe or Jason Peters are going to be starting at right tackle in this game. Jake Curhan, maybe if he's fully healthy, but there's a little bit of uncertainty there. And it doesn't matter which of those 3 is going to be in there. If Myles Garrett's on that side, that is going to be a matchup where you better be providing tight end help or running back help or both to try to keep Myles Garrett from single-handedly destroying your game plan and sinking your ship. He's that kind of a player where he can take your game plan by himself and obliterate it. We've seen him do it the 49ers game a couple weeks. One of the reasons he was able to win that game is San Francisco just didn't have much of an answer for Myles Garrett, and he has been dominant all season long. One of those rare players, #1 overall pick that has lived up to all the hype that came with him. He has been dominant really since coming into the league. So it's kind of an Aaron Donald type situation where you can't let him, he's going to make his plays, but you cannot let him just obliterate your game plan. And if that happens, if he's able to consistently get to Geno Smith, good luck. This offense is going to have a tough time getting anything going because he's that caliber of a superstar.
Absolutely. I mean, blocking him is pretty much mission impossible. The Browns defensive line has monsters roaming around like Jurassic Park. I mean, it's not just Myles Garrett. It's Zadarius Smith, it's Okoronkwo, it's Dalvin Tomlinson, and Maurice Hurst. They got some ballers along that defensive front. And Myles Garrett especially kind of has that sixth sense of getting to the quarterback and wreaking havoc in the backfield either way. So you can't leave tackles home alone with Myles Garrett and expect to be successful. And then that goes into the third one as well. The third key is to take some play action shots. And really what I've noticed as well is, yes, the Browns are a very good defense. They're actually only 28th in red zone defense as far as percentages of allowing touchdowns when you get in the red zone. They've allowed 9 touchdowns and 13 trips. The problem is they are the second least. They've allowed the second least red zone trips total of any team in the NFL. The first being the Seattle Seahawks. So that really you got to take those shots, because if you kind of get squeezed into the red zone, this defense if you don't want to get, squeeze yourself, you got to take some shots, because, you got to keep them off balance, keep them on their heels.
Yeah, I think this is one of those games where you got to be thinking like the Foo Fighters. You got to be looking at the sky to save you, because you are not going to be able to just come in and just run the ball down Cleveland's throat. This is a good run defense. So they're going to have to take their shots, and don't get cute with running a bunch of shotgun play action. I'm telling you, Nick, this offense is just much better when they are able to get under center, and you can have the quarterback's back turned to the linebackers. I just think it's tougher on the linebackers at the second level to be able to decipher play action from under center. And you have more multiplicity that you can run both sides. If you're running from shotgun, you have the running back on one side or the other. Pistol is something you can do as well that can work, because you can run to both sides. But it's a little easier to decipher out of shotgun. So I'd like to see some of those under center shots out of play action. And I think they need to connect on at least 3 in this game, because Cleveland is in the middle of the pack for explosive plays. Even though they haven't given up a ton of yardage, they have been vulnerable at times to giving up these big plays. If you can protect, that is going to be the key here. Can you keep Zadarius Smith and obviously Myles Garrett away from Geno Smith? I think that under center play action game with the sprinkle of the ground game, it gives you the best chance to be able to slow down those rushers and let your aerial attack go to work for you. Now, switching gears to the defensive side of the football, Cleveland's going to be coming in with a backup quarterback in PJ Walker. It looks like maybe they could surprisingly have Jerome Ford available in the backfield. He actually returned to practice today with a high ankle sprain, but still probably a 50-50 proposition. Their backfield's banged up. Offensive line is healthy, though, and that's really the key here. Cleveland has been able to roll different running backs in, and they've been able to keep that ground game going, even without Nick Chubb, even without their starting quarterback. And so that's really one of the big issues here, is just trying to win on early downs against the run against this football team.
Yeah, the Browns have the number 2 rushing offense. And you got to stop them. Their helmets kind of look like pumpkins, and you got to be smashing pumpkins all day. You got to be smashing pumpkins. You got to be in the trenches, limiting the stuff in the run, and that comes. It's weird to say, but the cornerback Devin Witherspoon, he's got to be coming in flying, making those hits like he did last week, like he has really all season. He's going to make one of those giant hits in the backfield and kind of do the shrug and say, "Oops, I did it again." That's just how he's going to roll, I think. So you got to be smashing those pumpkin heads. As my rival high school had orange helmets, that's what we called them, pumpkin heads. It wouldn't mean to be derogatory towards the Cleveland Browns as well, but you got to be forcing. You got to pretty much do to them what they want to do to you, and that's make them one-dimensional.
Yeah, you need to win in those early downs. If you can put PJ Walker consistently in 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 or longer situations, he has not shown as a starter these last couple of weeks. He has not shown the ability to consistently be able to throw the football downfield. There's been a few hits, but generally he has not been able to do that. And so it's really about putting the weight of the world on PJ Walker's shoulders in this football game. Force him to beat you. And you usually want to do that with backup quarterbacks anyway, but this is a guy that was in the XFL for a while and he excelled there. He is athletic, so you're going to have to be able to keep him in the pocket. Don't let him extend plays. But if you can keep the Browns off schedule and you can make him one-dimensional and then just put the pressure, put the weight on PJ Walker, especially with the crowd, I'm anticipating the 12s are going to ramp it up to a whole other level with these throwback uniforms out there. The excitement for this game with the silver lids, the royal blue jerseys, the apple green stripes, so crisp. the fans are going to be fired up. And so it's going to be really loud in there for a backup quarterback. He has had all week to prepare, but still hold that ground game down, wait at the line of scrimmage, and say, okay, PJ Walker, if you're able to complete some throws on us, great, but we're going to force you to beat us. He hasn't thrown a touchdown yet this season. That is the recipe to me to really make this offense grounded, is taking away that ground game and putting everything on PJ Walker's shoulders.
Right, and looking at the two losses they have so far to Pittsburgh and Baltimore, the Browns are 0-2 when allowing over 3 sacks. So when you get 4+ sacks, they're 0-2. So in regards to PJ Walker, you got to hit him, baby, one more time. you got to get him on the ground. You got to get pressure, and you also got to hit those receivers as soon as they catch the ball. That's number 3. And you got to play smash mouth football. Rest in peace, Steve Harwell, by the way. And hit, tackle. Don't let them wiggle free for yak. It's with a quarterback like PJ Walker, the completions aren't going to kill you. It's the completions, and then yes, the 10, 15, 20 yard, getting, wiggling free. So the pass defense, in all 3 phases with the pass rush and then the tackling after the completions, they really need to be, Corbin, in sync.
Yeah, they do. And really what I'm looking at in this football game from a yak perspective, Elijah Moore is one of those super athletic, quick, fast guys that when he gets the ball in his hands, he can turn upfield real quick, pick up 10, 15 yards. Amari Cooper is sly in that regard, where he might not be the more explosive guy like Elijah Moore, but he's capable of creating after the catch. And David Njoku, the tight end, is somebody that can rack up yards after the catch. So this is not one of those games where you can come alone. You need to be like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and you need to be ganging up on guys after the catch. Make sure you're bringing them down. Some cowabunga dudes out there with Bobby Wagner and company. You got to swarm to these guys, limit those yards after the catch, and that's going to create a big opportunity because they're going to be throwing the football quick. That is one of the strengths for PJ Walker, is he does get the ball out of his hands quickly. So if they are able to get some yards after the catch, move the chains, and then they can keep pounding the ball with the run game, that suddenly this becomes a difficult challenge for the Seahawks defense. So they've got to be able to bottle up that quick passing game. And when completions are made, swarm to the ball carrier, get them down. Don't let players like Elijah Moore sneak out and get big yards after the catch, because that's something that could make this a very difficult game for the Seahawks to win. So I think that might arguably be the biggest key for them to win this game. You're putting the ball in PJ Walker's court. You better stop the skill guys, which they have some really good ones in Cleveland. You can't let them win after the catch and create yards, manufacture yards, or that could be problematic. Up next, we're going to get to our weekly picks to click and our game predictions here on our Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks, which is brought your way by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch those winnings roll in. PrizePicks is really simple to play. I can make my picks and submit an entry in less than 60 seconds. This week on PrizePicks, I've got Lamar Jackson surpassing 250 passing yards against the Cardinals. PrizePicks is an absolute blast each week, and it's an easy way to enjoy daily fantasy without the hassle and land quick winnings. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL right now. Use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. And use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Why root for your team on an empty stomach? That's a game day travesty that ensures you won't be cheering at your very best. Order on DoorDash and save on football watch party favorites. Right now, you can get 50% off, up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order by downloading the DoorDash app and entering the code LOCKED23. When I'm kicking back and watching the game with friends and family, I love to order Jet City Pizza, my favorite gluten-free pizza place in the Seattle region, with, of course, a 2-liter root beer and cinnamon sticks for the rest of the party. DoorDash makes the process easy, so I don't have to leave the comfort of my couch for delicious, great-tasting food before and after kickoff. Since it's so simple, I have ordered Jet City off the DoorDash app so frequently. The people who manage the restaurant, they know me by name. Ready to satisfy your taste buds on game day? Quench those cravings with your favorite local restaurants via DoorDash. Get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order by downloading the DoorDash app and enter the code LOCKED23. Subject to change. Terms apply. You're listening to the Blue Friday edition of Locked On Seahawks. As your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined, as always, here on Friday by my co-host, Nick Lee, for this 90s-themed edition episode here. Throwback week for the Seahawks. A special thanks to all the 12s, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. Don't forget, on Sunday, a few hours after the final whistle, Dallas Cooper and I will be dishing out our game balls. We'll be looking at some key storylines coming out of Sunday's game against the Browns, our 3 up, 3 down, weekly stock watch, and much more. That'll be coming again a few hours after that final kickoff, so make sure you're listening in to our weekly post-game show. All right, Seahawks-Browns. 2 4-2 teams meeting up at Lumen Field. This will just be the third time the Browns have played at Lumen Field. The Seahawks won the first 2 encounters. This is certainly a much better Browns team than the one they beat in 2015, though. Yeah, even P.J. Walker, we can say, well, at least he's better than Johnny Manziel, which he certainly is. The Browns have a ton of talent on the defensive side of the ball. They've got good players at the skill positions. They've got a talented offensive line. Looking towards this matchup, Nick, on the offensive side of the ball for the Seahawks, who do you have as your pick to click, the player that's going to come through with a big game to give the Seahawks a chance to move to 5-2 on the season?
Man, with some of the skill guys the Seahawks have, it's like choosing my pick to click is like choosing your starter Pokemon from Professor Oak. Do I go Bulbasaur, Squirtle, or Charmander? I don't know, but I'm gonna double down here. And from last week I picked DK Metcalf, and he didn't play, and so I got a nice fat goose egg on that one. I'm doubling down. I feel stupid and contagious. Here we are now. Entertain us, DK Metcalf. I'm going with strictly feeling, no matchups or X's and O's. I just think that he finds a way to make an impact in this game, just with having a week off. Somewhat of a tumultuous couple weeks. I think he's anxious to get that behind him. And really, I think he just looks so freaking good in that throwback, and I'm excited to see him ball out with it.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a player that I can't even remember the last time he had a catch, to be honest with you. So this is really going out in left field. But when you're playing in throwback uniforms against a throwback style team, because that's what the Cleveland Browns are. I mean, this is a 70s, 80s, 90s style football team. They like to ground and pound you. They play physical defense. So you need to have some bad boys come through if you want to beat the Cleveland Browns. And I think that Will Dissly is absolutely a bad boy with what he does in the blocking game at the line of scrimmage, his ability to break tackles after the catch. I've been disappointed that they haven't been able to get him more involved these last couple weeks. But this is defense. I think Geno is going to have to get rid of the ball quickly for most of the game because of the Myles Garrett factor. There are going to be those shot plays that you can scheme up, particularly with the play action. But I have Will Dissly going for 5 catches, 44 yards, and I think he's going to find the end zone in this game. I just think this is one of those games where you're going to have to rely on your tough guys, because that's what the Cleveland Browns are. This is a tough, physical, old school style team. You're going to need your players that fit that bill to be able to come through. And I just think Will Dissly in those silver domes, the blue threads, silver pants, I just have a feeling that he is going to dish out an old school performance in this game. So I'm going with Will Dissly as my offensive pick to click for the Seahawks. Now, flipping the script to defense, this really might be the ultimate side of the ball for Seattle to win this game, because Cleveland's defense is really good. We know that they've got some issues with injuries on offense. They're playing a backup quarterback. So the onus falls on the defense to really come through and keep this a low-scoring affair so that the Seahawks have a chance to win this football game.
Yeah, I was just going back to your Will Dissly one for a moment. You were goodwill hunting there with Will Dissly with the bad boy. I like the good, the bad there. See what I did there? On defense, I'm going to go with a guy who is collecting quarterback pressures like Beanie Babies, Corbin, and that is Jarran Reed. Jarran Reed has 19 pressures per Pro Football Focus right now through 6 games. That's already more than he had. It's already as many as he had in 2019 with the Seahawks at the whole season. Currently has a career high in a pass rushing grade, and he's got more pressures than the likes of DeForest Buckner, Leonard Williams, Eric Armstead, and Fletcher Cox in the interior. So he is just racking up the pressures. And I like Jarran Reed to ride that momentum and kind of wreck the ground game especially. So I do have him getting a sack and a tackle for loss. I think I had maybe 5 or 6 tackles, but I think he makes an impact in the run game and in pass rushing. I just think he continues to collect those Beanie Babies, aka quarterback pressures.
It's a 90s themed episode, 90s themed game, throwback uniforms, and me being the rock and metal connoisseur that I am, there is no way in hell I was going to miss the opportunity to pick Spoon Man. We got to have Spoon Man here. Come together with your hands and save us with an interception. I've got Devin Witherspoon getting a pick this week that actually counts. 8 tackles, an interception. And oh, by the way, I'm going to give him a sack too, because the Seahawks are going to mix in some blitzes, and PJ Walker, the backup quarterback, isn't going to know what hit him when Spoon Man comes into the backfield on a slot blitz and gets the sack. I mean, we got to give the Spoon Man some credit this one, especially the great and late Chris Cornell with his Pacific Northwest roots as well. So Devin Witherspoon, I think, is going to come through another big game for the Seahawks, and I'm making him my defensive pick to click. As far as game predictions go, this is a 3.5-point spread right now for the Seahawks being the favorites. It is a close call because Cleveland is a very good football team. Again, they're not your typical 4-2 team that in today's NFL, a lot of those teams can air it out. They sling it all over the place. This is an old school ground and pound physical defense, and they've been able to beat some pretty good teams up to this point. Looking at Sunday, Nick, do you think the Seahawks can hold serve at home, or do you think this Browns team is looking to take a bite out of the Seahawks at Lumen Field?
Oh, man. When the Seahawks play at home against a tough opponent, it's like Forrest Gump said, it's a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, and I'm honestly clueless. It will be the home crowd, of course, will be juiced in the Lumen Field, and it's the throwbacks, the juice, and really it's going to come down to all the small things. And what color will the winning team be wearing? Well, I'm blue, dabba dee, dabba die, and I'm going to say the Seahawks say bye to the Browns in a slugfest of two pretty good defenses, 23-20. I got the Seahawks winning a close slugfest. It's 2 solid defenses, and it's kind of weird to say that about the Seahawks, but they are kind of rounding into form in that way. And I don't see a ton of, I don't see a shootout happening. So it's going to be a slugfest. And again, as they say, bye to the Browns, 23-20 Seahawks.
Yeah, you and I are kind of thinking on the same track, although from a betting standpoint, I actually think the Seahawks are going to cover this 3.5, but barely. I think that the difference is the quarterback position, and I don't think the Seahawks are going to just have an offensive explosion in this game. This is not the opponent that I think it's going to happen against, but I think Seattle does have enough weapons on the outside, and I think Shane Waldron is going to do a good job of finding ways to get extra support for whoever's got to try to block Myles Garrett. I think the Seahawks are going to do enough to run the ball, just enough effectively to be able to open up some of those play action shot plays. And I think there will be a few explosives for Seattle downfield, and that is going to be the difference. So I'm going with 26-22. I'm going with kind of an odd score for a throwback game, but I could see this being one where a field goal or two is missed, an extra point or two is missed, especially because it's looking like, and it's early in the week still, but it's looking like this could be a game where there's some wind, maybe a little bit of rain as well at the stadium. So that could play a factor. I just have a feeling it's going to be one of those really weird games at Lumen Field heading into Halloween as well. I mean, there's a lot going into this game, and I could see it being kind of a creepy result from a scoreboard standpoint. Not a scoregami quite, but I think 26-22. Seahawks moved to 5-2, but it's not going to be easy. This is a very good, well-coached Browns team. So I'm expecting a close game down to the wire all the way to the final whistle. As always, you can follow me on Twitter, Corbin Smith NFL. You can also follow me on Threads. Seahawks fans looking for reporters on Threads. I'm using it a lot more now. Same name at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Nick at NickLee51. Subscribe and follow Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Coming up on Sunday, don't forget, a couple hours after the final whistle at Lumen Field, we'll have our weekly post-game show breaking down key storylines, Seahawks versus Browns, game balls, 3 up, 3 down, and much more. Enjoy the rest of your Friday and enjoy the game coming up on Sunday. Go Hawks.